Elizabeth Ross Haynes was a social worker, an activist, an author, a politician, and an African American. She mainly advocated for African American and African American women. She was born on July 30th, 1883 in Mount Wheeling, Alabama to Henry and Mary Ross. She was an only child. Miss Haynes was born in the poorest part of Alabama. The population was mainly African Americans. Her parents taught her good qualities at a young age. Her parents owned their own land, so she was educated at an early age, watching her family members work on their land. As a child, Elizabeth attended State Normal School of Montgomery. She was a scholar. Her grades were so good that she was offered a scholarship at Fisk University. She accepted the offer. While at Fisk University, she received her bachelor's degree in 1903. After Elizabeth received her degree at Fisk University, she taught schools in Alabama, Texas for a couple of years. While doing that, she decided she wanted to go to school to get her master's degree in social work. So she up and moved to Chicago. Elizabeth decided to take summer classes between 1905 and 1907 at Chicago University to get her master's degree. She received her master's degree in 1907. After she received her master's degree, she continued to advocate for African American rights. Elizabeth became a social worker because she had a clear understanding that race problems and gender concerns had to do with one another. Her gender gave her a voice to speak for African American women. She wanted to lift up African American, but at the same time lift up women as a whole. In 1908, Elizabeth was invited to work with colored students for the student department of the National Board of the YWCA. YWCA is dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. In 1910, Elizabeth married George Edmund Haynes, who was the co-founder and first executive director of the National Urban League, and he was also a sociologist. Then they later decided to have their first child, George Edmund Haynes, Jr. Mrs. Haynes started her social work career as the first African American National Board staff member with the student department of the YWCA. Elizabeth thought in order for people to understand black females, they need to see them in and through their conditions and surroundings. Haynes put in so much work and effort into the YWCA. After 1 year, the Colored Student Association had increased in number from only 17 in 1909 to 50 by 1910. She then took a break from YCA and later returned in 1922. She was working for the newly created Council on Colored Women. In 1918, Elizabeth's husband George got a position of Director of Negro Economics for the U.S. Department of Labor, so Elizabeth moved to D.C. with him. But that didn't stop Elizabeth from doing what she wanted to do. She still continued to advocate for her community. While in D.C., Haynes focused on African American women in industry. She believes a lot of the problems that African American women face in industry were the results of inadequate training and preparation. Black women wasn't treated fairly when it came to working. They even got paid the lowest. Elizabeth Haynes believed that African American women will always have one thing over white women, which was that they don't mind getting dirty or messing with equipment. They had the habit to work. She believed that white women would never do the dirty work. They like to stay clean. Haynes was a member of the National Association of Colored Women and served as a chair of the Industry and Housing Department of the organization. She also worked as a superintendent of the Junior Department of a Baptist church and as secretary of the board of manager of the Adam Clayton Powell Home for Aged. Elizabeth Haynes became a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha aka sorority in 1923 and a charter member of the Tau Omega graduate chapter in 1925. She used the organizations to continue to nurture and strengthen her relationship with other African American women. Haynes tried to make people aware of the social injustice by taking every opportunity that she came across to let her voice be heard. She built girls up to know their worth and know that they can make a change. She did a lot of research and protesting. While in New York in 1937, New York Governor Herbert Lehman appointed Haynes to serve on the Temporary Commission on the Conditions of the Urban Colored Population. They wanted to study the economic and social conditions of colored people in their community. Elizabeth wrote 2 good books in her time. One was Unsung Heroes. The second book was Harriet Tubman, The Moses of Her People, from 1820 to 1913. Both of the books were acknowledging African Americans who didn't get enough recognition for what they've done. Elizabeth Ross Haynes died in 1953 in New York City at the age of 70. She spent her life advocating, making change, and supporting the African American community. Elizabeth spent her life living up to the responsibilities of a true social worker.